So what is up guys, it is Smowtown here, and today we are looking at a part of the game that has always interested me, and that is assessing how powerful the Warframes are within the story of Warframe in this top 5 most powerful Warframes video. What do I mean by this? Well, I don't actually mean the practicalities of playing the game, which frame is the meta and can barrel through flocks of lancers with ease, and having the best loadouts that make them absolute DPS machines, such as Mesa. No, what I mean is what frame is the most powerful in the in-game lore, i.e. if you were to read all the descriptions and all the lore of all the frames in-game and not see any gameplay, which one would you read and say, hey, that's a really powerful frame? That's what we're going to look at today. So off the bat, let me say that every Warframe, of course, in the lore is extremely powerful beyond anything else that any of the other factions control. However, in my mind, some Warframes go beyond being mere engines of destruction. Some Warframes can manipulate the fabric of reality. They can manipulate time, or possess control over particles. We have frames who can harness the power of the sun, or generate wormholes right in front of them. These are kind of a tier above the regular Warframes who have battle-orientated abilities, as these Warframes have abilities that some could maybe consider godlike. At the outset of this list, let me say that this is of course a very subjective list based on my opinion and analysis of the in-game lore, and kind of just what I've been thinking as I play the game and play the different frames and read their stories and read about their powers. And personally, I did struggle a lot with some of the placements, as there are some that I think definitely could have been on this list, and taking some of the others that are on this list off the list. So take it with a pinch of salt. My favourite didn't make it onto the list either, so if your favourite didn't make it onto the list, please obviously don't be offended. This is just subjective and I would love to hear your opinions below. So with that being said, let us jump right into number 5 when we start this most powerful Warframes video. Alright, so coming in at number 5 is the classic Mag, who can manipulate magnetic force to crush, bend and deteriorate the foes around her. Much like Magneto in the X-Men mythos, the ability to crush and control metals through magnetic force makes her immensely powerful to every single faction in the game, who obviously are very dependent upon metals. Mag is one of those on the list that does translate this lore potential into the game, being able to ragdoll people, crush them, tear their armour off, so her power is quite easy to see in game. However, we are also quite lucky with Mag that we do actually see her intended lore power in a couple of cinematics, including the new opening one. I think it's plain to see in the new opening cinematic that the biggest display of power from the 3 Warframes that are shown in the opening cinematic comes from Mag, as she absorbs and catches bullets of an enemy Grineer squadron before redirecting them back, and then later on she crushes Dax warriors like they're flies. In the old war cinematic we even see Mag restraining a powerful sentient who had just defeated an Excalibur Prime earlier on, and she just holds it there quite easily with her powers before finishing off with a coup de grace. So Mag's display of effortless control over magnetism really cements her place on this list, and therefore a place in our hearts. Coming in at number 4 is Wisp. So probably not a huge surprise to many, but Wisp does indeed make the list, mainly due to her reality-tearing abilities. Wisp is an ethereal enchantress, essentially a other-dimensional witch who can summon powers and abilities from other realms and dimensions. And she is actually quite meta in the game as well, so quite a good one to have on the list. The first of her abilities is her reservoirs, which is the one you probably see most in-game, which summon her signature motes that bolster her and her allies. In the lore, these motes are birthed from the Wisp's separate dimension. Being able to summon powerful pods of energy from another dimension is really quite cool, and it only gets more impressive from there. Her second ability, Will-Wisp, summons a spectral copy of herself that she can phase between, so essentially she's able to jump from one spot to another using a copy of herself. Her third ability literally tears a hole in reality to cause a dimensional breach, causing discomfort and damage to the enemies around her. However, the real display of her power is her fourth power, Soulgate, where she rips open a gate to the sun itself, exposing enemies to its raw power, leaving nothing but smouldering ruins in her wake. I really like this ability because it does show how powerful she is, because you see her almost shaking as she tears the hole open as she reveals the sun, almost like it's taken such an effort, which it obviously would, but she is able to nonetheless control the magnificent energy of the sun and direct it at her enemies, and of course that is not a power to be sniffed at. I'm sure I don't need to elaborate any more why this power and her powers are immense in general. Opening doorways to other dimensions and bringing things through is pretty powerful. So Wisp, number 4. Moving on to number 3, we have Limbo. So I think it's evident at this point of the list that the frames on this list are ones who are able to manipulate the material world and other realities. No frame ticks that box quite as neatly as Limbo, the transdimensional traveller. Limbo is a Warframe that exists simultaneously between 2 planes of existence, the material plane and the rift plane. The ease at which Limbo can navigate between these two planes is evidence the way in which he plays the game. You need only do his dash forward to slip from one reality to the other. He's also able to project his enemies or allies to an alternate plane, and essentially put the team beyond the harm of enemies, or banishing enemies to another plane where they cannot affect the Tenno's mission and basically just have to watch helplessly as the Tenno operate on a separate plane from them. In the Limbo Theorem quest, it is explained that this rift plane is essentially another plane between the material world and the void, and being able to navigate it and manifest it against your enemies is why the jovial Limbo is actually far from a joke, as he is a frame who skips easily from one reality to the other and wields it with destructive potential against his enemies. So moving to the top of the list, and we are at number 2, and maybe a surprise to many who don't think she's that great in game in the meta, it is Protea. So Protea is Parvos' defender, who ripped out an entire new reality separate from ours to protect her patron. Protea is a remarkably interesting Warframe who conceals some of her immense power, as a big part of her flavour is pretty banal tech using gadgetry as one would expect for a Warframe assigned to protect a corpus bigwig. But obviously that isn't why she makes this list, despite the fact that her turrets are actually pretty strong. No, Protea is also a chrono manipulator, and that is why she's made this list. Her command over time is so powerful that she can rewind time to a point that she can actually rewind time if she dies and recover from her death. Her number 4 creates an anchor in time, allowing her to destroy her enemies and then rewind time to a point when she was less damaged and where she was at a different point in space. This is a huge amount of power. The ability to control time has endless applications. Imagining someone who can control time when you're in a fight with them would probably be one of the most dangerous opponents ever. This is actually demonstrated in our fight with a mere Protea Spectre, who continually unwinds the damage we do to them, and we are actually only able to stop her by being assisted by Nef Annual. Bear in mind this is actually only a Protea Spectre, never mind the actual Warframe, and so it only has a portion of her true power. However, even then, Protea's power potential in the lore is only being demonstrated in one point, and that is through the events of the Deadlock Protocol quest. Parvos Granum's assassination attempt took place all the way back in the Orcan era when the Corpus Board tried to destroy his ship. And yet somehow he has been preserved all these millennia through the immense power of the Warframe Protea. As Parvos' ship fell apart in the assassination attempt, Protea, still bound by her duty to protect Granum, harnessed her time manipulation powers and tore Granum out of the timeline and essentially created a new realm where time did not advance the same way in which the main timeline does. Let's consider that for a second. Protea, a Warframe, essentially created a separate dimension, a new world, where time is preserved, separate from the rest of the universe. That is an incredible display of power, and it's honestly hard to comprehend the magnitude of Protea's capabilities through her gameplay alone, and that is why she makes number 2 on the list. Alright, and moving up to number 1, in my opinion of course, it is Nova. Nova has control over antimatter, which she manipulates with ease and directs towards her enemies. So antimatter is the opposite of regular matter, which is what we are all made out of. And what happens when antimatter and matter collide? There is mutual annihilation. That's right, that is the power that Nova wields. She wields minuscule anti-particles that will destroy any matter that she directs against. Any matter. Personally, I would find Nova the most terrifying frame to face, as she could atomize any one of us within seconds, just by covering us in tiny antimatter that we could not even see. There would be no time to react or flee or fight back. You would just cease to exist in a moment, in a burst of energy. This is most plainly seen in-game in her number 4 ability, Molecular Prime, in which she coats her enemies in a film of antimatter, resulting in their violent molecular destruction. To the molecular level, they are completely atomized. She also flexes her incredible power in other ways, using the antimatter to cut open wormholes, essentially generating a miniature black hole in space in front of her so she can travel between one point to the next instantaneously. I honestly don't have much more to say about her. The fact that she wields antimatter as a weapon to such ease and is able to tear wormholes in the fabric of reality, that should tell you how powerful Nova is, but of course that's just my interpretation of her powers. So there we have it guys, the top 5 most powerful Warframes currently in the setting Warframe in my opinion. Some honourable mentions that I found quite difficult not to put on this list were Chroma, Inaros, Levos, and of course Grendel. I'm kidding. Having reviewed these Warframes, it is truly impressive how powerful some Warframes are and how far beyond they go being combat proxies. Some tap into real reality manipulation abilities, and it's just a moment for us to really emphasise how powerful our weapons are as Tenno. Again, this is my personal list based on my opinions, and I would love to hear yours in the comments below. Please let me know where you agree, where you disagree, if you think I've missed something major and not put them on the list. I really love to hear that. Please consider subscribing and liking if you're a Warframe fan, because I do Warframe content. But until next time folks, I will see you in the cold below. Take care. Sister.